I'm delighted to bring you Eddie Smith from Manchester City Council to the latest edition of Property.
Am I allowed to swear at this?
You can do whatever you want, Eddie. Eddie, we thought that that you'd left us, but you obviously with the times of COVID-19, you ended up staying on a little bit longer. How long are you staying in post for now?
Well, I'm leaving the role on 31st of May. Last day of work's the 29th of May. And Louise Wyman will be joining us on the 22nd of June from Homes England, but she's been on secondment to the West Midlands Combined Authority, working with Andy Street on design and development activities down that neck of the woods.
Yes, it was in the press yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're just waiting. Obviously, West Midlands and Homes England have had their own stresses over the last several weeks. So, she was asked to kind of help out there a little bit. So we've managed to kind of negotiate an early release from her contract, and which is good. So it just gives me the flexibility to kind of relieve myself of my responsibilities for running the directorate.
No one can ever see you actually leaving, Eddie. But what's it been like, life in the City Council over the last sort of 6-8 weeks?
Well, it's one of the remarkable things about the City Council. In these periods of adversity, we went through this, obviously, with the bomb in '96, the riots in 2010, the arena bomb, and obviously this tragedy that we're going through at the moment. I mean, the City Council just kicks into another gear in terms of how it responds to those crises, and it's a remarkable thing to watch how the organisation turns its attention to ensuring that the city functions and continues to function, and we deal with the challenges, whatever they are. But there's always a lot of economic, social and humanitarian issues to be addressed within the city, and we provide that convening role to lead the city through these difficult times. And obviously Sir Richard and our politicians are at the vanguard of that process, but we've got a whole organisation led by Joanne that's just geared to doing what needs to be done, and everybody just drops their portfolios and rolls their sleeves up and takes on roles and responsibilities that need to be done in order to make things happen. When we look back on how Manchester has coped with this in the months ahead, I think the city has coped very well with the crisis. When you look at the numbers of deaths that have taken place in our care homes, the number of deaths that have taken place in our hospitals, how the health and social care system has worked very well with the City Council, and that's a product of our health devolution agenda, very strong working relationships, very creative people. We've been at the vanguard of actually leading through how you deal with this crisis, and not a lot of it's been said publicly at the moment. And I say there is a story to be told, but you just have to look at our death rates in comparison with other cities in the UK, and we are in a very, very different place. And if you look at the levels of deprivation within the city, we should be at the top end of the spectrum rather than the bottom end of the spectrum. And as I say, it's testament to a lot of good work, great work that's been done at the front line, on the front line by NHS carers and other frontline workers. And also we've got our teams running, all of the stuff about getting food out to vulnerable groups, organising the PPE for care homes and whatever. There's loads of stuff going on behind the scenes that nobody's seen, putting several hundred rough sleepers into hotels, looking after those people, all takes time, energy, effort, and commitment from public sector workers. And as I say, a lot of it's not been seen.
I had a client a few weeks ago who was concerned about something, and I got a call at 10:30 on a Saturday morning. I called you, I think within about an hour. There was yourself, Richard, Joanne, all involved, sorted out that issue, but also turned it into a really positive relationship where there was, significant support and partnership between the City Council and Manchester's corporate world as well. So that responsiveness has been great. But what would you say have been sort of the biggest challenges for the city?
It's all at the front line, and it's all the stuff you picked up on the national news. Getting PPE into the health and into the social care system. We've been very alive to the challenges of what's happening in our social care homes within the city. Our most vulnerable people are in there. So we got upstream on the testing of people coming out of hospital. We got upstream on the need to get PPE into all health and social care settings as quickly as possible. There's been some real moments on that agenda where it's been really, really difficult. But I mean, you're aware, some of your clients have been help searching for PPE all over the globe. We've used other partners in the city. We've left no stone unturned to do what's right for our city, and it's a 24/7 job, and it has been for everybody. Certainly in those initial weeks, we worked every hour that God gave us to do that. And as I say, that's testament to how we do this. Anybody watching this that thinks the City Council works 9 to 5, forget about it. It's not the way we do our business. It's a full-on, every phone call's an opportunity, every phone call's an ability to make something happen in the city. And as I say, that's how I and others have always thought about how we do our business to make things better for Manchester as a place.
I'm speaking to a few developers over the last month or so. Lots of them seem to be using this sort of this lockdown period to get their projects and in particular some new projects in play. So in terms of your planning department, how have they found it? Have they been busy during this period?
Well, we took a very strategic decision almost, the moment Boris announced the lockdown, we took a very clear decision that the city was going to remain open for business, and that we weren't going to kind of put our pens down, because we worked out very, very early that this was going to be pretty bad for the city and for the country. And we took a lot of lessons from what happened in 2008 after Lehman's went down, that it's going to be a long haul out of this, and we can debate whether it's a V-shaped recovery or not.
Yeah.
But it's deep, and it's going to be very difficult to get back out. So giving very positive messages to our development community that we were open for business was something which we discussed very early on. And feedback that we've had from developers who work across other cities was that certainly in the initial weeks, those cities were tying themselves up just in the crisis of dealing with COVID-19. We didn't tie up our planning or our building control staff, or indeed other bits of the organisation that are tied up in the development process, like colleagues in environmental health and whatever. So, giving out very positive messages to the development community was important. We knew that our planning and decision-making processes were going to have to change. Meetings weren't going to be held. We didn't know at that point that we were going to get emergency powers. in terms of decision making. But we've really pushed it out and pushed it hard, and it's been very, very well received by both the development community and those investors that sit behind the community within the city, that we are clearly open for business. And I think we've understood that it's important to send that message out. In these difficult times, investors will place their money in cities that they believe are safe bets, and we're confident enough to believe that Manchester is one of those places. There's us in London, possibly Birmingham, where investors will want to continue to place their money, and having that open for business sign on the front door is really, really important. And planning is one of those places where they want to know that we haven't put our pens down, and we haven't. And as I say, we've continued to generate significant fees in the month of April, way ahead of where we thought we were going to be, and so it seems to have had its impact.
Now, you joined MCC in 2000, so a while ago.
Indeed.
Now, is that right?
Yeah, when I was a young man.
So obviously it's a very different city now, but what was the first project you worked on?
At that moment, the city was going through a pretty frenetic process of building the city that it wanted to present to the world in Commonwealth Games 2002. And one of my kind of principal roles at that moment was finding cash for Howard to do what he wanted. And I mean, I'd worked in the civil service prior to joining the city, and had ran and designed the European programs that were basically in place from 2000 onwards. And part of my role was to make sure that we went and raided the piggy bank for Howard, to make sure he had enough cash to do what he wanted, where he wanted. So there's a lot of schemes that benefited from that. You just kind of go around the city. You just look at the multi-story car park that Ian Simpson designed down at Shoot Hill, probably the most expensive car park in its day. But there was a slug of our cash went into that. Mike Ingle down at Spinning Fields had a significant slug of cash for his public realm, which underpinned quite a lot of the more interesting transactions that we did down at Spinning Fields. Humongous amount of cash went into East Manchester to underpin all of the public realm and associated works for the stadium complex. And it goes on and on. So that kind of period was all about just getting the cash in, and we brought several £100 million of cash in to underpin projects, and it was a great way to kind of learn about the city and to work with Howard, because every project had to be understood, and it's probably the best induction you can have in terms of how you get your head around the city strategically. And how you get your head around, a whole host of core schemes that were at that point were in their early years of being brought forward. I mean, Spinning Fields actually wasn't really there in 2000. It was just about to come out of the ground. So you kind of it was not a specific project, and then we moved on to things like housing market renewal, designing all of those schemes to intervene in the failed housing markets of North and East Manchester, and designing all of that intervention was something which then kind of flowed in after Commonwealth Games.
Tell us a little bit about the sort of major role you played up at Eastlands.
I went out to East Manchester 2007. East Manchester as Tom Russell's deputy. Tom left to go to the Olympics in late 2007. I became chief exec from 2008 onwards. So that time we worked on big projects like Sharp project with Sue Woodward. At that time, it was pretty groundbreaking for the city. Every agent, don't know where you were at that time, but I don't know if you were one of the ones that told us it would never work.
We started in 2010.
All right, that's all right then. You're still young enough, you say you can get away with this. But every agent in the town in 2007 told us that the Sharp project would never work. In our inimitable way, we decided to disregard the advice of agents. You've heard that before. And we went ahead with Sharp project, did that. And ever since the day we opened it, it's run at 98% occupancy. So it has been a success. And I think we're of a view that it gave other developers within the city the confidence to actually bring that sort of development forwards. As I always say, if you can make it work in Newtonheath, you can make it work anywhere in the city. Yeah. Did a lot of work with Man City Football Club. They were taken over by Sheikh Mansour in September 2008. We always saw that as an opportunity. I mean, I said to Howard the day they took over, it's an opportunity for the city, and it's not just an opportunity for the football club. So we always saw the ability to kind of work in a more expansive way with Abu Dhabi. We did a pitch to them. Within weeks of them being taken over, we were aware they wanted to move their training ground. We did a pitch to them called Street to Stadium, where it was based around a kid who would kick a football on an East Manchester street, could end up playing in the youth team facilities, progress into the first team facilities, and progress onto the pitch that the Etihad, all in one place, and it was called Street to Stadium, and it captured their imaginations. And that led to the training ground that opened on the old Ciba-Geigy chemical site in 2014, I think it was, no, 2014, 2015. Long-term project with the football club, and also we did a lot of work with them on underpinning encouraging them to expand the stadium as well. So football club been a great partner. As everybody knows, I'm a United fan. But as I say, I've had a very close working relationship with the senior team at Man City, and I think they are the consummate professionals, and they are brilliantly run football club. Yeah. Notwithstanding what's happening with UEFA at the moment, but that's another kind of line. But as I say, my experience with them has been very, very positive. And yeah, we did lots of stuff around Ancoats, New Islington. It stalled in after 2008, and we went through a very difficult period in terms of the opportunity to extend the city centre eastwards into Ancoats, into New Islington, and out towards the stadium. And we did suffer very, very badly. We lost a lot of the dynamism that it was starting to build in 2008. And we lost that momentum for 5 years. And that then saw us encourage the owners of the football club to consider a partnership with us, to look at the opportunity for the development of institutional PRS product in Ancoats and New Islington, mixed with some sale product. That led to Manchester Life as our kind of joint venture with Abu Dhabi United Group to drive that opportunity forwards. And I'm pretty certain that that opportunity wouldn't have arrived if we hadn't have developed such a strong relationship on delivering the transformation of the Etihad Stadium complex. We worked very well together, and as I say, one supported the other, in my view. So again, a lot of hard work went into that. So yeah, it's interesting to see what it's now spawning as well. You mean, as I say, Ancoats and New Islington are now seen as very interesting places to live and to work. We can see that reflected in values, and the profile that Ancoats is getting now, locally and nationally, and even internationally, tells you that I think we've done the right thing.
Absolutely, and obviously that's that whole thing from Ancoats up to the Etihad Stadium training complexes. If it wasn't for the relationships with various parties which were formed obviously by yourself, but the likes of Sir Howard, you've obviously worked really closely with him, and Sir Richard, and also more recently Joanne Rooney. What's it been like working with these sort of individuals, because they've been game changing for the city? So you must have had some interesting times down the years.
Yeah, I was first told about Howard in about 1988 or 1989 by a guy called Colin Smith, who was the chief exec at Oldham Council where I worked, and Colin told me very, very prophetically, he says, you got to follow this guy called Howard Bernstein. And throughout the 90s, I started to follow in great detail what was going on within Manchester. I live in Manchester, in the city council area of Manchester, so it's always been easy for me to kind of just keep an eye on what was going on. And I had friends and colleagues who worked for the city council, and I worked with a lot of people who worked with Howard, who worked with at Oldham, and I got quite a lot of exposure to the city council when I worked in the civil service. So I wanted to work with Howard, and I made it pretty. It was a very big ambition of me to want to work with Howard. So Howard's got the profile he's got today, but he was somebody who I decided I could learn quite a lot from. And they were doing things very, very differently from the rest of local government in the 90s. And that was very apparent to me. So I wanted to work with Howard. So, day one with Howard was, I said to Tom Russell, who was the deputy chief exec at the time, I want to work very closely with Howard. I want to write for Howard. I want to work for Howard. I want to draft reports for Howard. I want to do anything so I could just understand how his head worked. If you could ever understand how Howard's head worked. But I wanted to work with Howard, and from that first day to the day Howard left in March 2017, I worked with Howard every day, and it's been a fantastic experience. Richard was known to me again when I was working with the civil service. I'd seen Richard in action. He had succeeded Graham Stringer as leader in '96, and I'd seen Richard in a whole range of European funding boards where Richard was the Manchester representative, and I had seen somebody with a very sharp brain who could dissect reports and without briefings and make very, very incisive comments and critiques of these reports. But I didn't know him as a person or anything like that. I didn't really understand the politics of Manchester. And Richard is a fantastic leader of the city. I always describe Richard as a polymath. He's got such a breadth of knowledge and insight into a whole range of topics, all associated with both the management of cities, the management of organisations, and that's just in his day job. And Richard's obviously got other things outside his world of politics as well, which he's very knowledgeable about. But the Richard as the leader, and the team that Richard has had around him as politicians in the 20 years, we've got the best of the best in our cabinet in Manchester, and they are fantastic people, and they're good politicians. They know what's needed to do and to move the city forwards. And as I say, what you see in Manchester today is a product of that foundational political leadership that comes from Richard and his party. And you see how Richard works across the political spectrum. The city's worked with Thatcher, Major, Blair, Brown, Osborne, Cameron governments. We haven't worked too well with the May government. I don't know who did. But and again, I think we think we can develop a good working relationship with the Johnson government, because we have to, because if we're going to move our city forward, we have to work with national government. There's no point in waiting for the right government to come along, because nothing would happen in that instance. So Richard has been the constant. Joanne's joined. She's brought a very different dynamic to the leadership of the council. Very different from Howard. But again, passionate about the city, passionate about making the organisation a better organisation to work in, and improving our way we do our business. And look at what Joanne's had to go through. She took us through the bomb, and she's taken us through this process. And again, the organisational resilience and ability to respond to these challenges is testament to the fact that the organisation is still as strong as it was, and probably, in my opinion, probably stronger in many respects than when it was around. And that's good. The organisation moves forward, and it has to move forwards. And when I leave, Louise will come in and hopefully kind of move it forwards up onto another level. I've been doing the job for since about 2013. It needs to move up another level, and that's what my hopes and ambitions are for Louise. She's inheriting a great team of people.
I've got some quick fire questions to finish.
Right, come on then. South Africa, Cape Town.
Biggest influence on your career?
Howard Bernstein.
This is a good one. With the benefit of hindsight, looking back at your time at MCC, what piece of advice would you have given yourself at the start of the role?
Expect the unexpected in Manchester. Yeah. Moving from a place like Oldham through the civil service, you don't get to see the enormity of what cities can be confronted with, both in terms of opportunities and challenges. And as I say, every day that goes by in Manchester, there's something comes along, you go, oh, God, I never saw that coming.
And what do you think, which development or project or piece of work do you think has had the biggest impact on the city during your time?
I always say there's three big moves that the city got right. I don't think there's one, and I think you've got to kind of, some of them predate my arrival, some of them post-date my arrival. I think, again, this comes back to following Howard through from the late 80s into the 90s. And the two things that caught my attention in that period was one, the decision to modernise the governance of Manchester Airport. It was run by the 10 leaders of Greater Manchester. A lot of viewers won't probably remember that. And in doing so, then having the courage to go and build a second runway, the only runway that's been built at a commercial airport since the Second World War.
Wow.
We're the only airport that's runway. So Howard led that process, and that's where Howard came up on my radar. At the same time, Howard, in one of his previous roles in the council, was at the forefront of bringing Metrolink into the city in terms of a public-private led initiative, and putting the light rail systems in, and putting the airport, safeguarding the future growth of the airport, were two big plays for Manchester. And the connectivity issues internationally and locally to penetrate labour markets and whatever. We've now got nearly 110 kilometres of Metrolink in the city, and if we hadn't done it in the 80s, we wouldn't have had that today, and other cities would kill for what we've got.
Yeah.
The other big play that happened after I joined was the merger of UMIST and Victoria University, and to create the University of Manchester, to bring those two tremendous institutions together to create a kind of a globally competing institution, allowing us to attract the best talent and the best students into our city. All of this creates a platform and a bedrock for everything that we do in the city at the moment. And as I say, I had nothing to do with any of those three, but they're three massive game changers to the fortunes of Manchester. And everybody kind of always used to focus on the bomb and things like that. The bomb was an event that we took the opportunity to change the end of our city. It was brilliantly executed by Howard and Richard. But if we hadn't had those other three things happening, you wouldn't be where we were today.
I get that. And then your last question, with the $1 million question, which you're probably not going to answer, what are you going to do next?
Not telling you. No. Look, I've told people. I mean, I'm going to do something. I want to work in the area of development. That's a bit of a challenge at the moment. But as I've said a few months ago, I won't be doing work in Manchester. I want to work with people I want to work with, and I want to have a bit of fun. And my wife would tell you that I'm not going to spin 1,000 plates a day. I can spin 8 plates a day, because this job is. I mean, I'm 60. I'm now 60. I didn't have a birthday party because of COVID, but it is a very stressful environment to work in the city council, and I've worked there in quite a stressful role for 20 years. I've been on the senior management team for 13 years in the city council, and it is about spinning 1,000 plates, and that means you take phone calls at strange times of the nights, and you make sure the plate is spun, and you do things like that, and that's the way I do my business. As I say, when I get to 60, I want to do something different when I've got some energy still left in my system and my health still with me. I want to try and do something different. And I did say to Richard and Joanne in January 2018 that I was going to go on my 60th birthday. So I've stayed past my 60th birthday.
Well done. Listen, Eddie, on behalf of, I'm sure, a number of people, you made a massive impact to Manchester, and will be sorely missed. You've been a great support to me, so I'd like to personally thank you an awful lot for everything you've done down the years. And wish you all the very, very best, but keep in touch. And thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it, mate.
All right, best of luck, and thanks to everybody who's helped the city.
Cool, thanks, Eddie.